Hi, I'm Sarah Jackson, host of Internal Comms Pro, the podcast. We wanted to interrupt our regularly scheduled podcast season to bring our IC Pro audience some timely information given the situation we find ourselves in with this unprecedented coronavirus pandemic. This is a time for IC pros to band together and share the best ideas. A crisis like this can do two things. It can push you under the water, or it could elevate you and really showcase your wide array of skills. And so, in this breaking news episode, we talked to longtime IC practitioner expert Karine Stallings from Circle. Circle's our podcast sponsor, and I really wanted to bring Karine in. She is going to break down 7 items, and they're all easy to remember. They all start with C. 7 items you should have on your agenda when you walk into your planning meeting with your business continuity team. And these 7 items are really meant to help empower you to choreograph your conversation in a way that will show you're more than just an order taker during this time, that you really are your team's communication counsel. So let's get started. Welcome to today's breaking news special feature on Internal Comms Pro, the podcast. With all that is going on today, we're going to interrupt sort of our regular podcast programming so that we can bring some timely information to our audience. Today with me, I have Karine Stallings. She is the business solution architect for Circle. Circle is our wonderful podcast sponsor. And Karine was hired at Circle because of her extensive background in internal communications. And she's the person that comes up with wonderful solutions for Circle customers. So, Karine, can't thank you enough for hopping on real quick with us today. I know you've got sort of 7 C's. All these steps start with the letter C of how internal communicators can really shift their order taker position into really being a great communication counsel for the teams. So talk a little bit about what you're going to be talking about today, and then we're going to hop right into these 7 steps that you've come up with to really empower our audience today.
Sure. So I've worked at 2 large organizations in the past, Time Warner Cable, as well as Syneos Health, which is a contract research organization that was global. And in those roles, I was really charged with presenting communications counsel to clients. Although in a situation like a crisis, I've had a few in my day. It's often hard to be that counselor when you're in the midst of a crisis. You're almost an order taker. So I think these are the 7 pieces that I think we can really, as communicators, help to influence. The first is consensus. So you have usually a business continuity management team, which is made up of HR and legal and security operations, and also key leaders from different areas of your business. It's hard for them to really kind of talk about their ideas, the policies that need to change, the challenges that they face, and then distill that into a communication. And so within the team brainstorming and reporting out as a communicator, you need to take all of that into account and make sure that you're building consensus and have a parameters around review. So who's going to be the lead group that's going to review the communication and approve it? I've been in a situation where I've had 8 approvers and I've gone around and around and around with iterations. And that can be really challenging and really stymie your timeline trying to get that communication out the door. So I think consensus building on the front end is really important.
Great. And I think, we were talking on our prep call that that consensus really becomes that North Star, and that it manifests itself into keeping a climate or a tone that the employee is used to feeling so that you don't cause alarm.
Exactly. So you want to make sure that your consensus also around tone. make sure that just because this is a crisis communication doesn't mean that you need to have alarming messaging. Your messaging should really align with your mission, vision, and values as a corporation. And so you don't want to lose sight of that. You don't want to speak in a negative tone. You want to make sure that any change for employees is an opportunity, and that it's not something that employees need to be stressed about. So you want to make sure that you're not inducing stress.
Okay. I love that. So, consensus. Now we're already starting to, I think, shift that order taker when you are becoming the consensus builder. Let's go to the second C. It's complexity. Talk about what you mean by that.
Sure. Well, these situations are complex, especially with the coronavirus. This is something that's going to probably play out for months. And so it's not a one time communication. As a communicator, you need to make sure that the group understands that these messages first need a cascade. So before we can go out to employees, we have to prep HR business partners, all of those resource and support groups that work with employees so that they're positioned as authoritative sources. They need to understand the policies first, and even webinars or face-to-face communication is the best delivery in those instances. And then community is my other kind of C, because there are areas of a company's footprint where employees may be more impacted with coronavirus or another crisis, compared to another area. So, where do those communications need to change so that they're very tailored for that employee segment? So, that's really important to think about local communications. It's not a one size fits all.
Okay, so that second C, if you all heard, is complexity. Karine's got two sub bullets under that that include cascading messages and community. So let's go to your third C. This is sort of has to do with frequency. What's the third C?
Yeah, cadence. I think cadence is so important when you're talking about a long-term crisis like the coronavirus. If you think about it, this is not something that is going to stay the same. This situation is going to unfold daily. And so you have to think about, is it appropriate to have a daily communication update with employees? How often are we going to commit to bringing employees the information that they need to do their jobs, to work remotely as policies may change? How do you have social distancing with employee groups, especially frontline employees? How are you working with your local health departments and the CDC and all of these different entities who are providing guidelines on the ground? And if that information is evolving, that has to get to your employee audience. So cadence is really important. And so as a group, you have to set that precedence that you or that standard that this group is going to come back and reconvene, and that we're going to appropriately communicate with our employees throughout this major event.
I love that. Again, and we're going to be putting all of this in a great cheat sheet for you that gives you these seven C's with great, powerful questions that you can be asking your team. What do you call the team? Business continuity? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so usually large businesses, especially public companies, have to have business continuity plans. And they have business continuity teams that are made up of leaders across the company, HR, security operations. They often will convene over, crises such as a security breach, or if it's a security operation. So if there was maybe an act of violence at a specific location within a company, or a natural disaster, if there was a fire or a tornado or flooding, how do they keep their business running and continue those business operations in those times of natural disasters and health crises?
Okay, great. I know we have so many different kinds of audience members. So if you are, a startup or if you are in a small business, know that that's generally what's happening in these large enterprise business, and that can give you insight into if you're just getting started with this. Oh, hey, I need to get my who should be on your little mini business continuity team. Who should I be pulling together? So let's continue on. Let's go to your fourth C, Karine.
Sure. That's really being a conduit. So having your ear on the ground. As a communicator, hopefully you are helping to be an advocate of the employee experience. And I really worked hard in the organizations that I worked for to really cultivate some good relationships across the company. I was the kind of the communications point person for several business units, and so I really wanted to make sure that I worked very closely with those business unit leaders to understand what their challenges were, to kind of understand their employees. With one job, I even shadowed employees within different business units for the day to kind of understand what they go through. And so hopefully you have those relationships in hand, and it's a great opportunity for you to kind of get your ear on the ground and understand what's happening at a local level or within a specific business unit, because those interim policies and changes may have some real world ramifications. And so for you to kind of hear that and be able to say, here's the real world feedback on this new policy, and here's some challenges that we didn't account for. That's a wonderful role to have on that team.
I think also, Karine, when you're talking about the employee experience, a lot of for employees, their experience could be changing to a remote experience. So, is there any ideas here on how, if you are that conduit, how the communicator can position themselves with IT for a consideration of maybe a reminder of remote, work from home tools? Talk a little bit about that too, since remote work.
Yeah, well, hopefully a representative from IT, IT leader is on that business continuity team. But if there are holes with technology that they haven't account for, you really make sure that you're speaking out or speaking up for employees to make sure that they have access to the tools that they need. Most large companies have, off network access for employees, but I've seen in the news these tests, they're almost stress tests, to see if there could be simultaneous traffic on a virtual private network to get to those tools. So, oftentimes there could be latency issues, or employees may not be able to access those. So, in that situation, are they penalized for not being able to work if they don't have access? Those are all, I think, key points as a communicator that you can bring forth to this group.
And I love that idea of a stress test. I know we were talking, before at the beginning of this program. Lisa Harwin said, "What a great opportunity for me to help my IT team remind, the employees of all the great, tools that we do have." And so again, and just another great opportunity for IC pros to shine out there. I want to revisit something you said about changes. I think that's actually your next C about new policies. Talk about that.
So, changes with new policies, we make sure that those are communicated. So, there could be milestones, interim policies could be put into place for the duration of time. And then as employees, situation improves, those may sunset. And so I think as a communicator, you make sure that you're very clear on what's an interim policy, what is a new policy, and being able to be very clear with employees so that they feel like they're empowered to support the business. And that's whether they're working remotely or if they're in reduced time or in a situation where they're not in close contact based on those policies that are set forth. For employees to navigate change in times like this is very difficult. And so, as a communicator, you make sure that you're really kind of unpacking that guidance in an easy to understand way.
All right. Let's go to number 6. This is my favorite one, creativity. I think I know that situations like this can feel heavy, but when you're talking about, climate and tone, the internal communicator, they do have some opportunities to maybe lighten the situation with some creative ideas. Do you want to talk about anything that you've heard about that teams are doing to sprinkle some creativity during this situation?
Yeah. Selfies from home or, photos of their pets to be able to share. It would be great to have kind of a trivia contest that employees can respond to. Of course, if they have off network access, that can then they can win like a home care kit with all the like a survival kit of things that the company can send them to their home address. All of those like fun things that can kind of make this not a stressful, hard time, but infuse some culture and, connectivity in employees' lives as they're going through this.
Well, and I know your company is all about personalization. It also adds a touch of that when you get to see sides of different employees and their passions and what they like. It does add that personalized feel, and what a great opportunity for that in such a what could feel like a heavy moment. So let's go to the last C. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I think it's once this is over, it's really about celebrating and thanking employees for their flexibility. Even from a content perspective, who were members of the business continuity team that made these decisions, that worked around the clock to support employees and support the business to make sure that they maintained operations. So I think that there's opportunity to celebrate, and that thanking employees is such a huge piece because you got to have that gratitude, so employees feel like they are, regarded and that they are a part of the business's success. And then for the sacrifices that they've made, especially those that have had to work on the front lines, even though they may be scared for their personal health.
Well, and I think even to celebrate sort of all along the way too, maybe not until it's over, but I'm sure this uncovers really great, heroic stories that internal, comms professionals can be telling. And I also think to remind the internal comms team to take that win and to do share kind of and be tracking and thinking about storytelling the success of even how their team, was behind, pulling the team together to communicate. I always care about the internal comms person, getting the credit and shining light, which they struggle to do, but I don't want them to forget that.
Yeah, I always feel like that's not my role. I'm there for the employee experience, but that's a good point. I think that, just to build awareness around business continuity planning and what goes into that, especially for large enterprise, I think was is very educational for employees. The fact that there's a team of people that are, you know, looking at these types of major, possible business interruptions throughout the year, whether it's a natural disaster or if it's a cyber attack, that they're there to always be vigilant and making sure that employees are safe and that the workplace is safe.
Well, I can't thank you enough. This is almost can be someone's meeting agenda points, these 7 C's. Again, we will put all of this out on our social channels and our website so that you can make sure that this is your little cheat sheet that Karine has empowered you with so that you can really showcase the communication counsel and the leadership and the wide array of skills that internal comms professionals bring. Karine, I can't thank you enough for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it.
In light of this crisis, one light that I'm feeling is the Internal Comms Pro community really coming together to share some really great ideas. And I wanted to end with some bonus material here to this breaking news episode. This week I was interviewing Lisa Harwin. She is the Employee Communications Manager for the Port of Portland. Now, the Port of Portland is also the operator of the Portland International Airport. We were doing an episode on employee onboarding that's going to be airing in May. And I let the recording kind of continue as we were wrapping up, and I was asking her how she was feeling about with all that was happening with the coronavirus. And I caught these two great ideas from her. One of them goes into Karine's creativity bucket, and the other goes into a new bucket, the collaboration bucket, with a team that all IC pros need, IT. Let's listen in.
So two random things that, again, this idea of just reading everything, looking at everything, taking inspiration everywhere. Two things that we're talking about doing here that I have blatantly, I'm not going to say stolen, but borrowed from other people that have gone over very well in my workplace. And again, I think these are ideas of not staying in your lane. If you hear a really good idea, sharing it and pushing it forward. So one of them, a friend of mine who works for a healthcare system in Detroit, she does not have anything to do with communications, but she was apparently in the restrooms at her work, and they had done some little posters in the bathroom that were CDC wants you to wash your hands for 20 seconds. Here are some, song lyrics to, help you pass that time. And I love that idea because, first of all, everyone knows the ABC song or Happy Birthday or whatever it is. But lots of folks out there, if you just Google it on Twitter, are coming up with tons of fun song choruses that you could sing while you wash your hands. So that the song part isn't necessarily original, but the idea of taking a whole bunch of those. In my case, I tracked down 8, and I made 8 different signs, and we put them all over our building in every different bathroom. And now I'm hearing fun comments from employees like, I can't get that song out of my head. I had to go use a different bathroom. But it's just a fun way to make something that is scary a little bit more light, right? A little bit catch your attention instead of just the same CDC messages over and over again, trying to think about doing it in a different way. So that is one. And then the other idea was I was on a conference call yesterday with some of my PRSA Oregon colleagues, and I heard just the slightest mention of this, which was someone in an offhand way saying, oh yeah, last Friday we all worked from home and did a remote work stress test, blah, 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 blah. And then she just went on. And I was like, what? That's a great idea. And then I started Googling around, and I saw that Coca-Cola and somewhere else had in their HQ buildings basically said, this Friday, everyone in our building needs to work from home so that we can test capabilities of working remotely, our VPN capacity, whether or not we could hold meetings in Teams, et cetera, et cetera. So it was basically a planned stress test for IT and remote work. And I just thought that was another great idea. So I tracked down a couple of articles about it that big employers had done over the last week, and I sent them on to our IT team, and I think we're going to try it next week. But, again, I am employee communications. My job is not, coordinating stress tests for IT, but that's a good idea. And I shouldn't myself. And our IT folks, literally the response I got back was have you thought about this? It might be a good idea and kind of a fun way to test out capacity. And he immediately wrote back and he was like, yes, 100%.
100% indeed. Special thanks to Lisa and Karine for being here for our audience in this time of need. Now stay connected with us as we'll be posting all of these great ideas, Karine's 7C cheat sheet, Lisa's ideas on LinkedIn, Twitter, and of course, internalcommspro.com. Take care, be well, and as always, thank you for listening.